going live here, and give me 1 second to get some of this stuff out to social. Get the comments open. Anyone hopping in here? Okay, so I don't know what the hell's going on, but here I am on my lunch break at work back in the office for the first time in 6 months or so. Only going to be filtering into the office for a couple weeks for the rest of the year. This is one of them. So a setup that I admittedly don't necessarily hate. It's really not too bad, but on a day like today, it's definitely a little bit weird because I do have to hop out of the office and go on my lunch break to film a little reaction video in the crucible that is NFL trade season, silly season, whatever you want to call it, as far as Eric DeCosta goes, because the guy, he can't stop trading 5th-round picks for really good players. And I mean, in this case, you're talking about a 5th-round pick and a 3rd-round pick. Of course, talking about Yannick Ngakoue, who was the former Maryland pass rusher, guy who won the 3rd round of the Jaguars back in 2016, I believe. The Ravens, I think, had their eyes on him in that draft. They wound up going in a couple different directions. I think they took like Kamale Correa in the 2nd round. Great job there, Ozzie. Really, really sick choice by you. Actually, really a bad decision, but we don't have to relitigate that. But yeah, he's in Jacksonville for a while. Maybe becomes a little disgruntled, maybe not entirely gruntled, as Michael Scott would say. Shad Khan really not getting it done. And by the way, pulling off a little bit of a Shad Khan look here. Cody McGowan saying Sheriff Jake, thank you for that. That's really the look I was going for. That's the aesthetic I think everyone wants to pull off, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job here with these bad boys. But yeah, so Ngakoue was in Jacksonville for a while. I think he had signed to deal with them, or maybe he was getting close, but then kind of started falling through. He was incredibly, as I would say, not gruntled, disgruntled. I can assure you our employees are entirely gruntled. He was not gruntled. He was disgruntled. He gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings. I forget what they even wound up giving up for him. I don't think it was like a 2nd-round pick or anything like that. I probably should have put some of these facts together. As I told you guys, it's been a whirlwind of a day here at the office, so haven't had much time to really digest this. So I figured I'd just hop in here, take some comments, see what's going down, see some of you guys hopping in here. MD Law So Hard, what's up, bud? Glenn Davis, Dez, we're going to talk about Dez. Abdirahman, hopping in, we love you. And Cody sizing me up with the sheriff thing. So yeah, the consensus, I think, or maybe not even a consensus, but just sort of the cliche that was hopping around was to expect the unexpected, in that DeCosta is becoming a guy who you don't know what he's going to do, but it's going to be a blockbuster move, and you're probably going to walk away thinking, like, all right, like, he got some really good value there. And it kind of feels like that again with a 2021 3rd rounder, and I think it was a 2022 conditional 5th rounder. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I believe those are the exact terms. But depending on what happens with the comp picks, and Spencer, I was talking to him a little bit about it. I think he said there might not be comp picks this season, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if there are, then you're talking about either letting him walk or letting Judon walk, and you're getting probably a 3rd-round pick, comp pick back for that. So ostensibly, you're talking about getting Ngakoue for a 5th-round pick, which 5th-round picks we've talked about. That's DeCosta's thing. It's he's kind of turning into the 5th-round pick for a Pro Bowler guy, and I can't say it. I hate it. So as far as the football fit, he brings something different. I saw 4 sacks is what I was tweeting out that he has this year. Some other people are saying 5. Maybe they're looking at like Pro Football Reference and stuff like that. Who knows? But he's had a productive start to the season on an otherwise pretty bad team. And what I like about his game, and you guys know I'm not as big of a tape all 22, especially when it comes to defense guy as Spencer is, but I know a little bit about it, and I know a little bit about this guy and the fact that he is a speed rusher, and he gets there with a little bit more athleticism than he does power. So he brings a different element to a guy like Calais Campbell, who he saw on Sunday get 3 sacks using pure power against these really bad kind of offensive linemen on the Eagles. Jamon Brown, maybe it was, or maybe it was somebody else, but the Eagles even released somebody after he got those 3 sacks. But you saw him doing it just as that sort of wrecking ball-esque figure. You're kind of talking about something different with Ngakoue, who's a guy who kind of likes to get down and kind of go quickly, move fast, break things. And I think lining him up on the perimeter is going to provide, you can do some different things with Judon now than you're already doing, who's a guy who's very versatile, likes to drop back also likes to rush the passer, good against the run. You're going to be able to get even more creative with Judon, and you're just going to have that pure pass rushing element that I think you wanted with Derek Wolfe. I don't want to say Wolfe's been a disappointment so far because he didn't really sign for that much to begin with, and he's been injured. But listen, injuries were an issue with him in Denver, so it's kind of brought its way over here. So the point I kind of made in my roundtable is that if you get what you think you're going to get out of Ngakoue, which is consistent sack production, which people have been kind of lamenting the fact that the pass rush has been either feast or famine or not really there at all. If you get that out of him, and then let's say Wolfe comes back healthy for the second half of the season, then you're talking about adding 2 new guys into this pass rush that, you know, I think they've been good or maybe better than some people have been willing to acknowledge, but you're adding even more juice to that. They're maybe be more consistent, and you're adding a guy who's just a pure pass rusher, which it feels like the Ravens haven't had since the heyday of Suggs, which is maybe the last time Suggs was doing things like that was like 2014 when him and Dumerville were just wrecking the league. But he's just going to be, I think, the perfect acquisition for a defensive line that could just use some little more juice, little more push up front as far as pure pass rush goes. So that's what you're getting in a guy like that, and I think it's honestly the move that I didn't expect to happen at all, because you're talking about a guy who, like I mentioned, he was in Jacksonville, but he's from Maryland, and it sounds like all along he wanted to come to Baltimore. He seems excited by it right now. He was tweeting Ravens flock today, so he's involved in the process, seems pumped to come back here. His mom, I think, is still in PG County or something like that, so going to be coming back to his main home area in the 410, going to be joining a team that he probably grew up in close proximity to. I would guess he was probably a Skins fan growing up, but maybe not. Who knows? Seems like he's just happy to be back here with a good organization. He had gotten traded to Minnesota, and it seemed like that was going to be the perfect fit, you know, like lining up alongside Daniil Hunter and some of these other similar players to him. You'd think that would be a recipe for success, and it was for him personally. He had some good stats this season, like I mentioned, but Vikings just not getting it done as a team, and that's got to be pretty frustrating for a guy who has been on bad teams almost his entire career, but he kind of got a taste of what it was like to be on a good one in that 2017 season with the Jaguars going to the AFC Championship game, almost making it to the Super Bowl. He seems like a motivated guy, a guy who wants to not only succeed personally, but he wants to win. So this is going to be a good opportunity for him to do it. And whether it winds up being a rental or they wind up letting Judon walk and re-signing him, I think he's got a good opportunity to win. So this is kind of a great opportunity for both sides. And like I was hinting at there, it was not the move I expected, because he had been moved to Minnesota, and I don't know, I'm not a person who likes to move around a lot personally, so if I were one of these guys, I don't know if I'd want to be shipped around in all these trades and stuff, but if the Vikings are making him available and DeCosta is willing to pony up what he had to pony up, then why not make it happen? I mean, I like to always say that this is not like Madden or a video game, and this kind of stuff doesn't really happen too often, but here it is happening, and here it is with DeCosta doing it, and his sort of approach to me is something that I would refer to as a calculated aggression. Whereas with Ozzie, it's kind of right player, right price. We're going to sit around. We're going to build this team organically in the correct way. And you have a lot of that in Eric, who obviously learned under Ozzie, but there's a modern sensibility to it where it's like, yeah, you can do this stuff. Why not do it? Like, why not trade for a guy that just got traded to give up a third and a fifth and maybe get that third back in a comp? And you know, why not just do all the stuff that they're technically capable of doing, but because of maybe human elements or whatever that, kind of hindrance would be from the past, why not just forget about that stuff and make moves like this? And it's really interesting, refreshing, very, very cool to see a more modern, kind of sleek approach for the Ravens to take, because I think the kind of wait and see, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it that, but an approach similar to that under Ozzie was great, but I don't know if it really translated well to the 2010s, particularly the back half of the 2010s when they were trotting out these mediocre teams. So I think Eric has fully embraced the modernity of the league in the future, and I'm pretty impressed. That's all I'm going to say. And so that was kind of the big news, and then sort of slipping in underneath that, it's funny because people would, all the talk has been around a wide receiver. Are they going to trade for a wide receiver? Julio, unrealistically. Kenny Galladay maybe is the name people are talking about. Are they going to sign a guy? Are they going to sign a Dez or a Mo Sanu? Or what are they going to do? Because they need to make a move at wide receiver. And I don't know if they're going to trade for a guy or what, but it sounds like, according to Josina Anderson was tweeting about how they were keeping an eye on Dez. And then a few minutes after that, Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet, welcome back to Twitter after your little Manscaped issue that you had, he comes back with a little bit of fire because he tweeted out that the Ravens are planning to sign Dez Bryant to their practice squad. So what I like about that move, and particularly in the fact that it's the practice squad, is there seemed to be some trepidation around the Dez thing happening because some people seem to think that Dez, Dez is Dez. He's going to be Dez, and he's going to be a diva, and he's going to be feed me the ball. I'm the playmaker. But I think the fact that, and I made this point to a friend of mine I was talking to about it, he was like, and he's not a Ravens fan, and he was like, I said to him, he's just a depth piece. He's a guy who's going to come in and help the rotation out. And he said, yeah, I don't know if Dez feels that way, man. And I was like, well, maybe you're right, but the fact that he's willing to sign to the practice squad maybe tells me that he is. And I think that maybe shows just how much Dez has bought into the idea of him coming in and just being a depth number 4 receiver, which I think it was his trainer or maybe his agent or somebody was talking about when he was visiting the Ravens that first time and he did that workout. And Spencer and I were talking on, I think, the most recent podcast about how he was at Jimmy's Seafood the night before. And then if you listen to some people who are plugged into what that practice looked like, he ran a couple routes and then he started throwing up. So maybe Jimmy's Seafood prior to a day of intense physical, rigorous kind of calisthenics and running routes and stuff like that, maybe not a great combination. So maybe Dez could have been a little bit more in tune with what his body was going to do in that regard. So it's unfortunate, but me personally, I like it. I like Dez a lot. I always have. I like his attitude. And I think if he can kind of fine-tune things, I think he's only 31. He's been around a while, obviously, but I think if he can kind of fine-tune things and say, like, yep, I'm still a dog. I still got the mentality, but the physical attributes aren't where they used to be. So I'm going to have to plug myself in here, be a number 3 or a number 2 or a whatever receiver, and I'm going to have to, tutor Miles Boykin, and I'm going to have to get some of these guys to, embrace the work role that we used to take back in the day. I mean, he only got drafted a decade ago, but maybe kind of embrace the work mentality that got me to where I was back in the day, and I'm also going to be able to contribute to the team a little bit eventually, which him signing to the practice squad tells me that he's going to be willing to do so. So I think that's kind of what I like about the Dez move in particular as far as it goes to signing him to the practice squad. I think eventually you're talking about bringing him up to the roster because Chris Moore has not been active, and even when he is going to be active, potentially he's kind of just going to be that gunner. I don't think he's going to see much involvement on offense. He's been pretty much phased out of being an offensive player entirely, which is kind of unfortunate for a former 4th rounder at the receiver position, but sometimes it's good to just kind of cut your losses, and you don't have to get rid of him. I don't know, maybe you clear another roster spot, you keep 7 receivers, and you have Chris kind of be that special teams ace. That's all fine with me. So, I mean, why not add another guy like Dez, who he's not, knock your socks off like Kenny Galladay, but you just got to knock your socks off move with Ngakoue, which is really going to help pass rush, which I think did need some help. So you make that move, you bring in Dez to round out the receiving core, because for all the people that are hand-wringing about it, I don't think the receiving core is necessarily terrible, but it's just the consistency isn't there, and the ability to either win on the first or second down or clear things out for the run game to win on first or second down kind of isn't there. And I think that is personified in Jesse Bates, the Bengals safety, coming out and saying, yep, they're throwing to 15 and 89, and that's it, meaning Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown. So I think just adding another piece, another name, another guy, there's Dez, got to worry about him, whether that's true or not, or the extent to which it's true or not in 2020. I don't know, the extent of that necessarily, but he's a name, and he adds something. At the very least, he adds kind of just that veteran element, and I think if he works hard and gets on the same page with Lamar, I don't see why he couldn't catch some balls and maybe catch a few touchdowns and kind of get involved in the short passing game, which it does seem is lacking right now, or at least the intermediate passing game, because it kind of feels like I keep mentioning, that this offense is very feast or famine. It's very 37-yard from Lamar, 37-yard run from Lamar or nothing, or a long run ripped off by Ingram, or a big catch by J.K. Dobbins, or a big catch by Andrews. It seems like there's a lot of that, and then a lot of run on first down, go nowhere, run or short sack on second down, sets up a 3rd and 12, and then that's it. And it feels like there's way more of that than there is just kind of the consistent 3 yards here, 4 yards there, 5 yards there that we saw last year. It feels like it's very feast or famine, very much home run ball or nothing. So I think signing a guy that's going to kind of help work the intermediaries of the field, that's going to help you a little bit, and that's not necessarily the key to unlocking this offense's potential, but it's going to help you back to a more reasonable facsimile of what you were doing last year, which I think is pretty nice. So I'm in on both of these moves very much. Like I mentioned, I think Ngakoue is going to be a home run, and whether he resigns in Baltimore for the long run or not, he's going to help this team a lot, which does need some help in the pass rush. And I don't even know if Dez is going to help this team a lot in terms of production-wise, but like I mentioned, just having that veteran presence in there to calm things down a little bit, that's kind of a funny way to put it, because I don't know if Dez and calm down is maybe the things that you would associate with that guy, but I think, like I mentioned, I think he's ready to embrace the next chapter of his career. He's been through a lot injury-wise. I think he's re-examined his relationship with himself, with football, and that he's ready to be a contributor on a winning team, because he had some very tumultuous years in Dallas. I mean, he won a lot, but, man, some really tough seasons. Like, it felt like they would either go 12-4, 13-3, or they would bottom out and go 4-12, or like 5-11 because Romo got injured or something. That's a lot of tumult for a guy who, had shown himself to have a tumultuous personality as well. So weird personality fit in that sense. But I think coming to a consistently winning team and a talented young quarterback and an offense that's hopefully going to know what to do with him and know how to employ his intrinsic skills as a veteran who's going to be able to teach some of these young guys, I think it's going to be a pretty good move as well. So, yeah, all in all, Yannick and Dez, it's an interesting day to be a Ravens fan here as we head into the bye week. I feel like Eric wanted to get this stuff done so that they could bring these guys in and really get them up to speed for that Steelers game, which is looming very large because the Ravens are, they're the defending champions right now, but the Steelers are on top of the division as far as the win column goes. So it's going to be a big statement game one way or the other, and I'm very excited for it, and I'm even more excited now that there are two new pieces added into the equation here with Ngakoue and Dez. So let me get to a few of these comments before I get out of here. Glenn Davis, I'm not sure if that's Big Baby Glenn Davis. I don't think it is, but he says Dez. Yes. MD also R2, Flock Gang, Abdirman, good trade. Should we sign Antonio Brown? No, we shouldn't. They should not sign Antonio Brown. He's a bad human being and a bad culture fit, and I have no interest in that. Cody McGowan already touched on that. Abdirman, he's the Godfather. I'm assuming he means Eric. Sure. Devin H. AB next. No thank you, like I said. Thanks for going live. Ain't nobody else covering it. I'm sure some people are covering it, but you're quite welcome for that. Had to hop out of the office here, like I mentioned. Devin H. He's got to get in football shape. I'm assuming he means Dez. Yeah, I think he kind of was and is and was staying that way, but he just kind of had the weird situation with eating all the seafood and then throwing up practice. That's obviously pretty bad. And then he obviously had the foot injuries at the end of Dallas. Then he was on the Saints practice, or not their practice squad. He signed as Saints, and then he immediately ruptured his Achilles, which is like a mega tough scene. So that's tough. We're signing Dez, just announced. Yep. What about AJ Green? No, I'm not into AJ Green personally. I just feel like the trade isn't going to happen within the division. I think AJ Green is maybe the most important Bengal of the 2010s, and I don't think they want to see him suit up for the Ravens. And if nothing else, they're not going to just voluntarily make that happen. Mike Brown and those guys aren't necessarily. So I'm not into the AJ Green thing anyway. I think he's kind of washed and like not what he used to be. We need AB. Yes, AB. No, guys, we don't. He's a bad person. Overtime dad. I worry about signing AB and him trying to force Lamar to throw his way 15 times a game. Like, that's the thing. Like, you've got all that stuff. Like, he is a diva and he is a distraction no matter what people want to say. It's easy to forget this stuff because we're such an immediate society these days, but do you guys remember what he was doing in Pittsburgh? Like, speeding 100 miles an hour, getting tickets, and he's getting in practice fights with Roethlisberger and throwing footballs at him and forces a trade, and they trade him to Buffalo, and he says, nope, don't want to go to Buffalo, going to have to send me somewhere else. So they nix that. Then he goes to the Raiders. Then he's got the helmet stuff. Then he's got the thing with his feet going on. Then he's releasing videos dissing John Gruden, and he's saying, release me, do whatever. They finally release him. And all the weird shit starts to happen with the sexual. He goes to the Patriots, has one good week there, and then the weird stuff with the sexual assault starts to bubble up, gets released, I don't know if he got arrested or what happened, but he assaulted a truck driver. Like, are we forgetting that? Are we forgetting him going live with a domestic situation going on, screaming at the cops and like calling his baby mama or whoever that was like a bitch, like on like IG Live or whatever. It just, he's not in a good space, guys. And I know it's been a few months and it's easy to forget about that kind of stuff, but he's just, I don't know. I'm not into it personally. I am very much not into it, and I don't think Bisciotti's into it. I don't think DeCosta's into it. I especially don't think Harbaugh's into it. And I think it's easy for Lamar and Hollywood, who are friends with the guy, to sit there at age 22 and say, oh, yeah, we want him, you know, and just ignore all that bad stuff. I get that. Like, they're friends with him. Hollywood is obviously his cousin. He's going to stick up for him, and that's fine. If you want to stick up for him personally and say he's going to turn his life around, that's fine. I hope he does turn his life around. I just have no interest in that uncertainty hanging over the whole situation if they were to bring him in, and I don't think the Ravens brass is into it as well. So I'm not into it, and the Earl Thomas thing, like, if that guy set these guys off for just kind of being a dick and, like, missing practices and just being generally a surly human being, AB is going to wear these guys down to an absolute nub. And so it's not worth it in that mind. People can change, look at Dez. I don't think Dez ever did anything half as bad as what AB is saying. I think Dez was just kind of a diva. I think AB's shown himself to be maybe a bad human being, which, like, I'm just not into. Can a guy dream? Yeah, you can dream. I mean, if you want to dream about it, that's fine. And listen, maybe it will happen. Maybe I'm projecting, but I'm not into it. Earl was cut for less than what AB is doing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that kind of sums it up. Yeah, it's a great dream. He's an amazing football player. I think he still could be an amazing football player. A few months of silence after all that shit that just happened just isn't enough to convince me. But, all right, guys, we're running over 20 minutes here. This was fun, hopping on, talking a little Ngakoue, talking a little Dez Bryant coming to the practice squad. You know, a fun day to be a Ravens fan. There have been a lot of those recently. There have been 5 of those at the very least, with the 5 wins, no matter what people want to say about whether they're doing it in convincing enough of a fashion. But here you are, team at 5-1, hoping to make a Super Bowl push here. So they're making some moves that I think are indicative of the fact that they believe in all of that. So thank you guys for hopping on here and talking those moves with me. Hope you have yourselves a great lunch hour and a great rest of your week. We are going to be recording the podcast tonight, so we're going to be touching on this, Spencer and I, more and more in depth. In the morning, that pod might go 2 hours. I mean, we went an hour and 50 just last Sunday night talking the Eagles game, so this is probably going to be another long one, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun ride. Suit up here. We got what is pretty much the second half of the season coming up after the bye week, so they're loading up. You guys should load up too. Have yourselves a great rest of the week, and talk to you tomorrow on the podcast, and enjoy the game on Sunday as well if nobody's tuning into that. Later.